It's still a little early on a Monday, so maybe there's more things that are going to come out, so that'll show up in the tomorrow's episode. But I thought it was interesting some of the things I found that came across my news feeds this morning. One of which, let's see, what's the I come up with a. So last week there was a. What was it last week? 2 weeks ago, the Trump side accused the Harris side of futzing with the images of crowd sizes. He's all about the crowd size, and saying, "Oh, well, they obviously faked it." But then out came, all the people that attended showing the crowd sizes, and it turns out he was wrong. That it wasn't AI generated. It actually really did happen. And I guess I'm kind of wondering if he just kind of shared that claim because he wanted to post his own AI generated images, which is interesting. So we're in this point where either side is. In fact, one of the articles that came up is this is really the first election, national election that's happened since AI generated content has been available for the masses, and so he's using it in a way that helps his side, and maybe at some point Harris will be forced to do the same thing to start creating content for their side. But it's interesting that he's found what is the least likely thing to happen, that Taylor Swift fans would vote for the other side, and then of course he said, "I accept this recommendation," which is kind of funny. Another one that was there seemed to be a lot of articles today about let's see, any comments? Nope. There seemed to be a lot of posts and a lot of news stories about either the idea of folks burying their head in the sand and not wanting to even accept the idea of AI, and saying that it's just not relevant to them. They don't want to know about it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to think about it. And other groups saying, no, you got to focus on this stuff. And that seemed to keep happening over and over again. There was I don't have it. There's one thing where the Australians don't like. It was like an Australian survey. AI. Most Australians, here it is. Most Australians are worried about artificial intelligence. Worried, not, and don't seem to want to. They're worried about the impact and how it's going to create problems rather than think about any of the benefits. So it's interesting that 3 in 10 adults know about services like ChatGPT, but they've not used them. Which maybe that's still early for general population to have experienced ChatGPT. But that said, my mother has. She's definitely not a early adopter. Being 80s, I should know this. 86, 87, somewhere in there. But even far fewer Australians have used image-focused generative AI like Midjourney or DALL-E. Only 3% of respondents to this survey. How many people actually responded to the survey? More than 4,000. And I wonder if it was in specific cities or all across the country. But only 3%, where was it? 3% use these services regularly, and 13 have experimented or tried them. And half of adults haven't have not even familiar with image-based AI services. Now, is this strange? Yeah, again, it's early days for this stuff. Stuff has only existed for, Midjourney. How old is Midjourney? A year and a bit. Um, so anyway, interesting thing. So there's, I guess, a view of where is the population with regards to AI, and most people, at least in Australia, and I would think this is true for the world, most people, like 90%, it's not a big part of their lives. We are weird in that we are using artificial intelligence in interesting ways that help us do our. Maybe that's not the case with everyone here, but I think for a lot of people here, we're using artificial intelligence in interesting ways that actually help us do whatever it is that we do, or at least we're investigating it. How many people are on here? Yeah, good, 9 people. All right, so one of the places where people need to start paying attention is the American Bar Association. Okay, I don't want that. Okay, so I had this open and then I got a pay window. Let's see if I refresh. Oops. If I refresh. Refresh. There we go. So, okay, fine. Let's go with, okay. So the American Bar Association has given guidance that all lawyers must read. I think that's what it's saying. Basically just saying, if you're trying to avoid AI and avoid even the idea of knowing anything about it, you need to think about this stuff. It's important. Lawyers need to know what it can do, what it can't do. But at the same time, lawyers who have taken advantage of AI, they need to be careful because, always, I think I've said this a number of times here, never trust the output of any sort of AI service at face value. Just don't just take the information and think, oh well, this must be true, because often it's not. There was a example of, I think it was Avianca Airlines. A guy on the plane, was sitting in the window seat, sitting in the aisle seat. Now, I hate sitting in the aisle seat. I'm 6'4". I'm kind of tall compared to most people, I guess, taller than the average in the U.S. And so because of that, I will never sit in the aisle seat. I will always sit in the window seat, because that way I can control where my legs go, even when I fall asleep. If you fall asleep, sometimes they kind of veer off to where they shouldn't be, which is like the aisle. Don't put your feet in the aisle, because on this Avianca Airlines flight, the beverage cart was going down the aisle and it hit this guy's leg, and he said he was really hurt. And so he sued the airline, and the lawyer that he got had apparently just been told by his kids, hey, there's this new thing called ChatGPT. So he asked it to come up with a way, a brief to the court saying, here's how he's going to argue. And he gave like 6 or 7 citations, they cited 6 or 7 other cases that showed that he was going to win this thing, and handed that to the court. And the judge said, well, this is amazing. This looks like really compelling. But he clicked on every single one of those judgments, and none of them existed. So ChatGPT generated all this proof that this person had a good case. So I think he was, whatever the term is for telling a lawyer, you've done bad things, don't do that again. So anyway, this is one of the main things in here, is that lawyers need to understand what these AI tools can do, and also know about the ethical risks involved here. And one of the things is, if you are charging, like say you've decide to charge a certain amount for your services, and then you use AI services to do that for you, and maybe what used to take 2 hours, you're down to 15 minutes, you need to adjust your pricing accordingly. Oh, here it is down here. So if it takes a lot less time, a fee charged for which little or no work was performed is an unreasonable fee. Now, I didn't know lawyers were able to think this way, that a fee is unreasonable, because every time I've dealt with any sort of lawyer, it's always been they charge as much as they possibly can. So that's kind of refreshing. Yeah, there really is enough for a daily coverage of AI news, because I mean, there's always stuff. Some of this, is it super important? Maybe not, but we're not going to spend too long, and you get a little bit of extra stuff from me as well. Hi, Matt. I think the people using tools like ChatGPT and Gemini as an enhanced search tool. Yeah, I think a lot of people will use these tools as enhanced search tools, which I think is wrong, because you should be verifying what you see and use it as another tool in your research, but don't use it as the only tool in your research. What's another thing that was interesting? So there's this idea that companies are getting worried about AI. It is showing up more and more often in risks. So Netflix warned that competitors leveraging AI could affect its ability to compete. Other companies are putting in their notice to shareholders that AI is a potential threat to their business, and especially in automotive and energy and manufacturing companies. So there are risks to AI. And this isn't so much, people putting their head in the sand, but another example where they are, I was kind of shocked by a statement like this. So Procreate is an app on the iPad. I use Procreate I used to do it for some of the content in my videos where you see like handwriting. I used to do that in Procreate. Turns out it's not you can do it there, but there's another tool I find far more capable in that way, called it's like Taiyusei Sketches, I think it's called, which is just so much better than Procreate for that kind of thing. Procreate is really interesting, and it was mind-blowing when it first came out. It's become a little less so. It's kind of, for some things, it's falling a little bit behind. And then this statement comes out where we're never going to use generative AI. It's ripping the humanity out of things, which is kind of what people have said about like Photoshop. Oh, it's ripping the creativity out of images, even though a lot of the techniques that were early on in Photoshop were exactly the techniques that somebody like Ansel Adams used, not just would have used, but he did use. A lot of the burning and dodging was a key tool used by, you think of, there's a classic Ansel Adams photo where there's a river kind of in a horseshoe canyon or something like that, and the clouds are this like super dramatic scene. You see the dark and light, and Ansel Adams was all about different levels of darkness and brightness, and his whole zone system, the nine levels of brightness that you have in your image, and you should play with those a lot. And so he would and you if you can I've seen somewhere like the original image, and it's a really boring image, but because he used those dodging and burning and dodging tools in the darkroom as he made the print, it just becomes so much more powerful. So I feel like this is such a a marketing thing, like to say, oh well, we're going to be better because we're not using any AI, but at the same time, it's kind of a stupid thing to say, um, and disappointing thing to say, because just because he doesn't have the creativity of thinking about AI in new and interesting ways, and just looking at how other people have done it in the past, um, which might not be good or not. It I don't know. It's just disappointing that somebody would say that. Somebody who's running a company that has a product that I use, um, built on a foundation of theft. What? That is, generative AI is ripping the humanity out of things built on a foundation of theft. Totally wrong. Technology is steering us toward a barren future. We think machine learning is a compelling technology with a lot of merit, but the path generative AI is on is wrong for us. Yeah, disappointing. Um, but let's see. And then here was another. So there's been a few articles about uh, AI use in colleges and universities, um, and so what is that? How do you deal with AI in classes and students using AI to help build the answer to a problem? Like writing a paper, um, and write me an essay, or whatever it is, and you know how do you deal with it? Is it just about creating a policy? Is it you do just ban all use of AI in the university, and anytime somebody's accused, you need to somehow prove that you weren't using AI? Do you use the tools that help identify AI written essays? Sometimes looking for things like the word delve or other things that AIs tend to use, and those tools aren't foolproof. They sometimes catch things that were actually written by a human and say that they're written by an AI. So there's still a lot of confusion, which is why I was really surprised when, of all places, continue on that to say, of all places, I don't think of. Now this is probably a problem with my own head. I don't think of Alabama as being like the forefront of technology. Not, and that's probably a wrong thing. I mean, Huntsville is in Alabama and isn't one of the space centers in Huntsville. I mean, so got really smart people. I guess that's. I'm a little biased since I went to school at Florida State University in Florida, and Alabama would be a competitor. So obviously they're not as good. But anyway, I found it amazing that this University of Alabama is really trying to embrace the use of AI within their classrooms, and has created a program to make it easy, or make it so that all faculty members really discover what you can do with artificial intelligence. And yes, they're going to have a policy in place somewhere, a policy in place to say, don't use this for writing the answers. And sometimes, especially with newer technologies, you just have to say, well, here's a policy. And if you break that policy, then bad things happen. I remember, I should check on questions. There's lots of stuff here. With regards to just having a policy, I used to work at a company called PC Docs down in Tallahassee. And PC Docs was a document management software company. I was in support, and I was in support, and then I was in IT. And we had one of the developers there, Scott. or Steve Bliss. Yeah, Steve. Um, he was a whiz. I mean, he was amazing. One of the core developers behind the product, and did anything that was really cool in the product. He probably made, and he was able to. Everything was built on Novell NetWare. Let's stop that. Everything was built on Novell NetWare, and I remember going to a some sort of education thing when talking about NetWare and about being able to impersonate another user in Novell, and I said, well, I asked a question. Well, how do you deal with when somebody will impersonate this other user? I said, oh well, that can't happen. There's no way. That's never happened. It's not going to happen. And I can't remember the exact scenario, but the folks at Novell were like, no, there's no one's ever done this. So okay, well, every user that's done this, and they're able to get past it by doing this, and they like, oh, that is technically possible, but nobody's ever done it. And if that's happening, you need to just have a policy in place that says that's not allowed. and that was how we made sure he didn't do that. I think I seem to. It was right when I finished school, which would have been 92, 93, probably. So we're talking 30 years ago. Anyway, so some parts of that story might be wrong. So you need to have a policy in place, and so that's. And so these folks at University of Alabama have policies in place to say, don't use this for cheating. Educators shouldn't be afraid of AI. They should embrace it, use the technology in ways that make sense for the classroom. And so it's just nice to see that they're encouraging their professors to really take advantage of what it has to offer. Now I saw another interesting one about governments using AI in government. Oh, come on, what's going on here? There we go. So presidential cycle, first one to use generative AI. And most of the stuff, it was just like, oh, maybe we need to come up with policies about how AI is used within our jurisdiction. And we definitely have something on the EU side, but this is more talking about the US and different jurisdictions within the U.S. At the state level as well as at the county or city level. And like Rhode Island state senator concerned about AI's potential to amplify disinformation. Absolutely. That we're seeing that already in the U.S. election around Russia trying to influence and Iran trying to influence the election, ensuring that they the party that they don't want doesn't get in the office, and the party they do want does get into office. But what I thought was interesting was this quote. Could prove, so this Republican Secretary of State somewhere could prove challenging for swing states in the presidential election, but he said it may still be too new of a technology to cause widespread problems for most states. I think we're past that point. Yes, it's new, but there are people out there who know how to use this stuff and can do. We saw that image of a Swiftie saying that you should vote for one particular party versus the other, which was completely AI generated. And so to say that it's not going to cause problems yet, it's a little bit. I think there's some problems here. Of the 99 things we chew our nails over, it's not even in the top 10 or 20. I don't know. I don't know that's a maturity level that it'll be utilized everywhere. I think it's at a pretty high maturity level. It's not perfect so that anybody can use it, but it's pretty amazing. Oh, am I even sharing that screen? I'm not. A share screen. Let's share my window. Share that. And so that was this article. This from, where is this? Government Technology. So that was, just, we're still at a stage where things are new enough that some folks think it's not something to worry about. And yet I think what's really interesting about how University of Alabama is doing is like, we need to educate our educators on what is available here. And um, you know, and the American Bar Association. We need to educate our lawyers about what you can do. Don't. It's not saying you must use it. You just need to understand what it can do. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, people in government who are creating laws often don't. They don't know what they don't know, and they assume they know more than they do about what it can do. And that's probably always the challenge of being in government and having to create laws around things that you don't really understand. And you can easily get into trouble. And we've seen this all about all sorts of issues over time. And even something that I've experienced as an employee at a company called OpenText, which acquired a company called Capteris, where I was working before. And we had a product called WriteFax, and fax. The technology where you hear the phone ring and you hear the modem connection tones, the going back and forth, figuring out what's the fastest speed that it can connect at, and then transmission of an image of a document over that phone line that gets printed out on the other side. That technology, and often nowadays it's not printed out, but rather added to an email box or something like that. That technology, faxing, I mean, it's existed for the first fax machine came out 120 years ago, 130 years, something like that. It was crazy. It's 1880, 1890 of being able to transmit the contents of a document from one place to far, far away. It's 1800s, which is mind-boggling that it's that early. I remember seeing a photo of first device for doing essentially that same task. But and I mean, yes, things have improved a lot, but the reason why faxing is as an industry is bigger than it ever has been. There are more fax lines that are sold each year. I seem to remember the number at OpenText. WriteFax is probably the biggest of the tools to use for faxing, for at the kind of enterprise level, and their business grows 20% year over year, every year. Every year that I was there, and I was there 15 years ago, and I believe it's still growing that fast, maybe a little bit slow. I don't know. It's still growing. And the reason is because so many government bodies believe that faxing is secure, even though it's not in the way they think it is. They think you can't modify a fax before it comes in, and you can. They think that the image isn't. It's all about not being able to modify and that document being secure when it's not, and that email is less secure, and it's not. So laws have been put in place that a signature on a fax is as good as a real signature on a piece of paper when it's not. So yeah, it's interesting that where I was going with that. There was a point. No, I forgot what my point was. Oh, just about what was my point about not wanting to accept technology? God, what was I thinking about? Anyway, let's move on. Let's pretend that little brain burp didn't happen. Um, let's see what else was interesting. Uh, Also in government and AI news is a crazy Wyoming capital city. What is the capital city of Wyoming? Oh, I've hit a paywall on here. Okay. Um, let's see if this works. No, Maybe that's not working. Okay, well, there's a and the Washington Post had an article about Cheyenne, Wyoming, and the article was talking about there's a candidate for mayor who is saying that if you elect him, you're not actually electing him, but you're electing an AI bot that will do all the actual work, and that AI bot will be better than anything possible. It's like, oh, that's. I mean, I love AI, but I know where don't do. There's some stupid things you can do with it, and I would say that's probably a. We're still too early for that to not be a stupid thing. One more thing to look at that's interesting is from CIO magazine about AI to go nuclear. Now, I remember there was. No, don't accept. There was a lot of fuss made over, I feel like it was like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Azure, the cloud service offered by Microsoft, had a job listing for somebody experienced with for a group of people experienced with nuclear technology, and the idea being that they want to start using nuclear plants for powering data centers. AI, in this case, is talking about AI data centers, but just data centers in general. And so AWS bought a company, $650 million, that had a data center on site at the nuclear power plant in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. Isn't that where they have the like the groundhog that comes out of the ground to say if it's 2 more weeks of summer or winter or something like that? But then or that's Punxsutawney, something like that. But there are all these deals going in place to try to get access to nuclear power for data centers, and even Eric Schmidt, in that interview at Stanford, talked about power being one of the biggest problems, and that we should get really friendly with Canada because they've got lots of hydro power. But there's all these different efforts to try to work with nuclear power plants, and there's a company called Oklo, which is chaired by Sam Altman, built a fast fission nuclear reactor, intends to sell its energy and SMRs to the U.S. Air Force and data centers by 2027. Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates co-founded TerraPower in Wyoming on a new nuclear power plant that uses salt for cooling and is intended to operate as a commercial power plant. So there are a lot of efforts to get nuclear power to power data centers, and that's potentially a really great thing. There are concerns about lack of power, but then there's also concerns, a lot of concerns in the U.S. about nuclear, although most people that have a problem with nuclear have a problem with the nuclear designs from 50 years ago and not so much the modern designs that are out there. So it was just interesting that power is going to become a bigger and bigger problem, especially with data centers that are doing more with AI, and nuclear is a potential solution to this. All right, so let's take a look at some of the questions that I've had over if the technology is causing more work, double the rates. Yeah. Regarding the lawyers. How do you verify info that you don't know, and that's why you're using these services in the first place, run on at least a few services? How do I verify? I think, whenever I'm trying to learn about a new technology, do that initial question to the model about explain something, whatever it is. And then use one of the search engines to find what are the authoritative sources of information on this thing. I've kind of got almost like a table of contents is a way to think about it. I've got something that describes something. Now verify that stuff is actually true. So it helps get a initial understanding faster, but it's not the answer. It's kind of created more work. Maybe it's, or maybe it's less, because now the work is more directed. You can verify the things that are said as you research online to find the actual answers to the question. Yeah, I think it's now. Will people do that? Maybe not, and those people will be stuck saying things that are just stupid all the time. If you just trust what comes out of an AI's output, there's a good chance that some of it or all of it will be wrong, and you need to verify because you are saying that this is your answer. And so if it's all wrong, the person you're giving to isn't going to say, oh, well, I understand it came from an AI and it's not your fault. It's your fault because you're the one that said, yes, here's the information, vet it, use it. And if it's wrong, that's your fault, not the AI's fault. Hopefully we can make AI better, but still, shouldn't build anything you can't verify them. I don't know about, you shouldn't assume that it's build? You shouldn't offer something as fact unless you can prove that it is fact, or at least as close to fact as you can. I don't have a, oh, there. Yeah, try to get it as close to what is fact. Matt, did you hear that OpenAI has a way to verify whether a paper was written by an AI? Is that really possible? So there are a lot of tools that try to assess whether something, and it's not so much an AI way. There are many tools out there that will look to verify whether something has been written by a human versus not. And many of those tools are statistically pretty good, but statistically you could be on the wrong side of the statistic. And so you might have written a paper or some document that it says is fake when you wrote it. Well, it's right most of the time, so is that good enough? And one of the examples of a tool, there was a study done to show what are the words that are most likely to be used in AI that are not used in everyday English language. And one of those words was delve. The idea of very few people use the word delve in English. And so if an AI tends to use that word, if you have a document that uses the word delve, then obviously it's AI generated. Well, at the beginning we said it's very rarely used, so it's used. So it's used by some people, but very rarely. So if you have a document that has the word delve, it's not that it is written by AI, but there are indications that it might have been generated by AI, and you need to get more information. And so try to get as much information and to finally come up with the idea of, maybe there's an 80% chance or a 90% chance that it was written by an AI. But there's nothing, I don't know if there is a way to say absolutely it was written by an AI. There's not a fingerprint that you're going to put into the text that says this was written by an AI. Statistically, if you have 100 papers, you're going to see that 20% of them are written by an AI. That you can say, but could you say exactly which 20% are written by the AI? I don't know. I don't think so. Repetition. Repetition? I'm not sure what repetition dealt with. All right. Any other questions? What time are we at? Oh, I gotta stop doing that thumbs up. The AI is detecting thumbs up. See, there's an example. It's thinking I'm doing a thumbs up because it has seen that most people that do this are thumbs upping, and boom, there we go. But when I just do this, I wasn't doing a thumbs up, and yet it does that false positive of like, oh, you want a thumbs up? Great. Let's see. Are there any others? Let's go to, looks like there are some. No, okay. I've gotten everything. Any other questions? oh my God. Can I tell you about last night? Last night. Oh my goodness. This dog. That dog. Oh my God. So getting ready for, my wife and daughter decide they're going to go camping in the backyard. And so they're out in the backyard. They tried it the night before, but storms came through that were awful. And so they're in there. I'm like closing things up, and not locking the door. I locked the door and then realized, oh wait, they need a way in case there's an emergency. So unlock the door, and then I noticed there's a bit of dog poop in the living room. It's like, Jade, what are you doing? And so I clean that up and look around, look for any other droppings, and I don't see any. I look everywhere. I see everything, nothing there. 20 minutes later, daughter comes in. She wants a snack. I make her a snack. And then she wants something else. And she goes into the other room and she tells me, Dad, Jade threw up on the couch. Like, I was just there 20 minutes ago. And there was this massive amount of throw up on the couch. Oh, God. I clean this up. I start spraying it. I mean, and it was awful to clean. Like, awful to clean up. I start spraying it down with, like, Rocco and something stuff to get rid of the smell, and then some other stuff to get rid of the stain. As I'm cleaning that up, I see the dog throwing up again at the other end of the room. Like, oh, I clean that up. I start cleaning that up, and then I go to the door to where I'm gonna throw stuff out, and she's already thrown up again. Like, ah. And as I'm cleaning that one up, she throws up. Oh my God! She's like, how much is in that body of yours? Am I still streaming, Sharon? No, I'm not. So it was just, and then I decided to put her on a leash when we go upstairs to go to bed, and as she's sitting in her bed, she throws up one more time, and that was thankfully the last time, and she seems fine now. But oh, what a night! What a night! Okay, AI as a new interface of personal computers. What do you think? Far from now or next Windows? AI as a new interface. I would say isn't it? I feel like Windows is making, or it has made, and I think for the next release AI as a core part of the Windows system. Because don't they have they now have an AI key on new keyboards? I feel like that's either has happened or is about to happen. I don't know. And of course, it's going to be a big part of Mac OS as well. And the problem, there's a lot of problems, potential problems with where are you generating the information. And so your personal computer has a lot of personal stuff, whether that personal computer is a Windows machine or a Mac or a Linux box. It's personal. It's got your personal content. And if you're taking the text from all your emails and uploading them to some service that you can't necessarily trust to not do anything with, all the models, all the online models unless you have gone through the steps you have to go through, all the models will use your content to make the model better. We know this. It's not like a tinfoil hat kind of thing. We know that all the models will take all the information that people have asked and the answers that they've gotten, and will use that to try to make the model better for the next version of it. And there are steps you go through in OpenAI and in you can't do anything in Copilot, but on the Microsoft side, but unless you're at an enterprise level or you're hosting on Azure, there's some steps you can go through there, but you have to be paying a lot more money. And there's definitely settings in on the Twitter tools as well as on Gemini and others. So they will all use your information unless you've said don't use my information. And you check the right checkbox. But if all your personal data is being uploaded into some sort of cloud, well, then bad things can happen. As we've seen, it's not like theoretically, we've seen this happen, where the information uploaded can be used in ways that you did not intend. And so so that's one of the nice things about how Apple announced that they were going to start making a more important part of the OS and about the experience with Mac OS is that the first level is local, and anytime there is going to be sending that information somewhere else off of your machine, it's going to let you know, hey, I'd like to ask OpenAI, or I think there's the first level, like a first tier that will use Apple's data centers, and then and they'll ask you, do you want to offload it to these Apple data centers rather than just keep it locally? And then a secondary prompt of some sort, do you want to push it to OpenAI for further processing? But it's always going to be local first, which is great. I don't know if I saw that on the Microsoft side. There are lots of tools for doing local AI. I happen to believe in Olama, but there's lots of other ways of doing it too. And as long as whatever system, does it local first, then great. So far from now or next window, I'd say next Windows release. Next Windows release, definitely next Mac OS release. Anybody not taking advantage of these things is kind of being left behind. How are we doing? So we're at about 52 minutes. I think somebody said at the beginning, is there enough? Is it really happening so fast that there's enough content for daily news? Yeah. It really is. And all of this was actually, now you could make the argument, is it important stuff? There I am. No, I didn't do a thumbs up. I'm just using my hands. Is it important enough to focus on? Am I still sharing my screen? No, this is Paul's from before. Okay. Got it. Are these important news items? They aren't brand new models. So there was a brand new model that came out Thursday or so, Hermes 3 from New Research. And so that was definitely more news about this particular industry, I guess, or how we're actually doing what we do. But how is it applied to the outside world, I'd say is almost probably more important, and definitely more important to more people. So I think it's a lot. Sometimes there were, I'm just starting this out, experimenting with this idea of doing a daily AI news thing. And they've definitely seen that there were some things I covered, like, this is stupid, the fact that I'm even mentioning this. But I'd say that all the things I covered today, I mean, they're actually interesting how people are accepting the technology and where are people still having problems. I mean, that Australia survey was very interesting, is that people are either scared of AI actually it was, we also saw it, I do a weekly stream with a friend of mine who I used to work with when I was back at Datadog. And he's also an evangelist / dev advocate / whatever you want to call that role. Developer advocate, some people call it, or advocate, or which I think is a stupid name, but evangelist, a little bit more all-encompassing. And we talked about the Stack Overflow developer survey, and there were some AI questions in there. And it was interesting to see, even in the Stack Overflow world, how few people really are accepting AI. Now, that said, I'd say Stack Overflow, I mean, as AI gets to be more and more used, Stack Overflow is definitely one of the places that will die, because there's no value in using Stack Overflow anymore. With AI, one of the problems people have with artificial intelligence tools is that they ask a question like, as a developer, write a function that will do X, and the first answer they get, like what I said, verify. Don't trust it at face value and just put it in your application and just assume, oh, well, AI wrote it, so it's going to be good. Put it in there, verify that it works. Probably is not going to work first time round. And so does that mean it doesn't work? Or does that mean that was just the first stage in working with the AI? I mean, you need to, it's not just ask a question and get an answer and you're done. Because when working with application development, you ask a question, you get an answer, you try it, there's an error, ask the system about the error, and we have a next revision, and then you keep going and build out this code. And maybe you can automate some of that. There's definitely tools that will automate the debugging process, but still there's always going to be a human involved. But is AI any good? How many back and forths are you okay with having before you say AI is not useful? I mean, I'd say that If I could ask a question of a senior developer in my organization, how do you do this? And they'll give me an answer. And there's a good chance it's wrong because I haven't given him all the information that he needs to be able to give me a good answer. So I need to give him all the information. And often we can converse with an AI, giving them just the smallest little smidgen of information and expect it to guess the rest. And if we give all the information we need to give, then it has a better chance of success. All right. Well, we're coming up to about an hour. So I think I'm going to sign off. This is the skill that I am trying to get better at. Trying to say goodbye. So I'm going to say goodbye. Wow, there's a lot of people here. So unless there's any last minute questions, I'm gonna get out of here. I need to finish. There it goes. I'm not doing a thumbs up. I'm gonna get out of. How can I do that without a thumb? I'm gonna get out of here. Unless there's another question. Got a couple of seconds in my arbitrary amount of time. Unless you're all just got the stream going and not really paying attention. Are there any questions? No? I'm going to check one other place that could have them. Top chat. Oh, there's top chat and live chat. Oh, they're both the same thing. Okay. Well, I guess we're done. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. As usual, I'll try to have a cleaned up version of this up within the next hour or so. And, I got a dentist appointment in a little bit. I hate the dentist. Okay. Bye. Find that stop button.